Welcome back. As the Democrats celebrate another victory in the presidential election, many are asking the question what the Republican Party has done wrong and how could they have won the race. Here now to talk more about the election and the latest in the world of politics and our local scene is political analyst and SUNY Maritime Professor Mark Meirowitz. We also want to let you know that in regards to yesterday's local elections, the Democrats with a clean sweep in the 13th District, Charles Rangel, 14th District, Joseph Crowley, 15th District, Congressman Jose Serrano, and District 16, Elliot Engel, all Democrats incumbents, all won their seats. Joining us now, as we said, political analyst Mark Meirowitz. And Mark, good to have you.
Hi, Darren. How are you?
Doing wonderful, Mark. And as we look back to yesterday, a major victory for the Democrats and the Republicans, somewhat scratching their head. Your thoughts on yesterday's events?
Well, actually, I was listening to your interview with Roy Paul and Brandon Bryce, and I think they raised some interesting points. I'd just like to comment on them if I could, just to start off. I think Roy's point was that Romney had no positions and didn't stand for anything. And I think that Brandon said that the problem with the Republicans is either they're going to have to play ball or not play politics. I think that I wouldn't agree with either of those points. First of all, Romney definitely had a plan. It just was not accepted by the American people. More importantly, there's a matter of tone and maybe even a class struggle going on here. I think that's all about Bain Capital and the 47%, and those issues resonated very strongly, including the, I think, progressive turn in the American populace. Obama was masterful in touching all the proper bases in society that he needed to get his support. Now, on the point about the bipartisanship, I don't think it's accurate to put it all on the Republicans. To my mind, bipartisanship is a two-way street, and both the Democrats and the Republicans are going to have to work together in the future. We have some huge problems down the road, the fiscal cliff, all the things Brandon related to those as well, the deficit, and all these issues. Clearly, the American people did not accept Romney's solutions to that problem. And I don't think that solving the problem is going to be finger pointing between the Democrats and the Republicans.
Let me jump in here and say, listen, the big thing was that a lot of people thought that the Republican Party would be able to garner more seats in the Senate. That did not happen. So when you look at what happened in the Senate, what kind of message does that send, and what should we be looking for out of that?
I think the message is very clear. We have a country that wanted the status quo. It's a country that did not want to make any big changes. They kept the Democratic control of the Senate, the Republican control of the House, and President Obama in the White House. Now that means that the populace or the people are worried of this polarization, this concern about these issues, and they did not want to make any precipitous changes at this juncture. But going forward, I believe that this thing called bipartisanship, I don't know if it's realistic or not, but it's simplistic to say that if the Republicans don't play ball, then the next midterm election is going to be very bad for them. I think the president at this point is going to have, waking up this morning, realizes now he really has the world on his shoulders, because he's now in his second term, so this is his legacy.
You spoke a little bit about saying that there was, people pretty much wanted to keep things the same. Let's keep it in perspective, though. When you look at the popular vote, you look at 51,726,493. That's the vote for President Barack Obama. 51,457,489 voted for Mitt Romney. Very close. So even though we're talking about electoral college, when you talk about the popular vote was very close. So there are Americans out there, and there is a country that is actually divided.
Well, the country is definitely divided, and the country is definitely polarized. But that's why we have an executive branch. That's why the founding fathers came up with a president as an individual, not as an institution, to be able to unify the people, to go directly to the people. You mentioned the Electoral College, though. It's interesting to note that you talk about the popular vote, but in actuality, it is the electoral vote that's determinative. And now there's a lot of talk about the electoral vote, but that was the game. That was the game changer, the ability
Absolutely.
to win in those states.
Absolutely, that was a game changer. We know that was a game changer when it came to Al Gore losing to George Bush. That was basically on the virtue of the Electoral College, because it certainly wasn't by the popular vote. But when you see a vote so close, and when you see, and you have to respect the Electoral College because that's how presidents decided. But when you look at the popular vote, it also brings to mind the question on bipartisanship. You have to be able to sit at the table and talk and address some issues, because when you have an America that is this divided, come 2016, it's a fair game. True or not true?
Well, you're trying to get over these problems of the deficit, the fiscal cliff, etc. As I say, I think that this is going to be on President Obama's shoulders. He got this vote of confidence from the American people to have a second term, which is a great privilege to have a second term. He now has that responsibility. He cannot finger point against the Republicans. I mean, I totally understand the point that the Republicans have taken the position that they took in the first term. But it is feasible, and for example, President Clinton did, to work with the other side. And that will mean sacrifices and compromises on both parts. So there has to be a stopping of this finger pointing and this vilifying of the parties one by the other. I think the American people are sick and tired of it also. You mentioned 2016. I think it's a darn shame that billions of dollars were spent on these campaigns. At the end of the day, what did we get out of it? We basically got the status quo. So I think we have to have a rethinking and a revisiting of our entire political system, because clearly it does not work properly. It produced, as you said, Darren, a divided population, a status quo election with momentous problems that nobody seems to be able to solve. I mean, we're over the campaign now. So President Obama, a masterful campaigner, unbelievable campaign, brilliant. That's over now. Now he's got to go to the second term. He's got to roll up his sleeves and do the job that the American people elected him to do, which is to bring us all together and figure out some solutions to these impossibly difficult problems. And I have every confidence that he has the ability to do that.
Well, let me jump in here and ask the question. I'm going to pose the same question I posed to Roy and Brandon just a few minutes ago. Do you believe that going into this next session of Congress, are we going to see bipartisanship? It is a lame duck session of Congress, but are we going to begin to see bipartisanship, or are we going to continue to see the equal stalemate that we've seen that got us to where we are today?
Well, I mean, as far as the lame duck session, nothing much will be done in that session, as is traditional. But as far as the next session, the Republicans are clearly concerned about their status at this point. To become irrelevant as a party is the possibility for the Republican Party. The Republican Party has failed to resonate with all of the major ethnic groups in this country. Let's be realistic. I mean, Catholics in Ohio, I think, went for Obama. Latinos went for Obama. African Americans went for Obama. The Jewish vote went for Obama. Who is voting for the Republicans? Some evangelicals, and even some of those, I think, as Brandon pointed out, might have not been so enthusiastic because of Romney's Mormonism. I mean, who's voting? And then there's the 1% or the 53% or whoever those are. I mean, the Republican Party's image is, from a class point of view, is elitist party of a bunch of rich people, and they've got to overcome that. I have said this for a long, long time about the Republicans, that they are unable to communicate with ethnic Americans, with African Americans, with Latino Americans, with Jewish Americans. They have no idea how to communicate with them. If they don't learn how to communicate with them, they're going to become irrelevant in our politics.
Do you believe that with the Latino vote coming up, and there's only a 300,000 vote difference, I should say, in the popular vote, that's the equivalent of sometimes one small city, one major city, however you really want to look at it. That could be the difference in terms of a popular vote. Do you see in 2016 the Latino vote being even more increasing with voter registration, voter mobilization, and how that's going to play out going into 2016?
Well, I mean, it is clear that the Latino vote is the most significant voting pattern that we've seen. And I have to respectfully disagree with Professor Perez. on his point about the Latino vote. I think it's impressive the way the Latino vote has increased in significance over the last years, and the way it's increasing in significance. That means that the national political leadership is going to have to be attuned to satisfying the needs of Latinos. And as far as registration, I mean, there's a big issue about this voter suppression, voter ID. That's a big issue, and that could come up again. Hopefully that can be resolved. But there's absolutely no question that that vote is significant, and it is being paid attention to. So I think that Professor Perez's criticisms about the Latinos, I think, what will be borne out is that both national parties had better be attuned to the Latino vote, or they face electoral disaster. That's been proved in this election. And they are going to grow in significance, not diminish in significance. There's absolutely no question about it.
Well, Mark, we got to leave on that note, but thank you so much for sharing with us. You can catch Mark Meirowitz here on Open, giving us political commentary. You can also catch him on Perspectives as well, where he will be sharing more about the election results and the future of both the Republican and Democratic Party post-election 2012.